Hello and welcome to the Infinite Learning, the space where we explore powerful ideas, practical tools, and timeless wisdom that help you grow both personally and professionally. I'm your host Monisha, and every week I bring you conversations and reflections that are designed to spark curiosity, shift perspectives, and inspire you to take meaningful action. Now, before we dive into today's episode, let me share something with you. The reason this podcast exists is simple. I believe that we all have untapped potential waiting to be unlocked. Sometimes all it takes is the right insight, the right practice, or even the right story to change the way we see ourselves and the world around us. So, if you're new here, welcome to the community. And if you've been listening for a while, thank you for being on this journey with me. Today's episode is called The Art of Storytelling. We're going to unpack how storytelling can transform the way you connect with your audience. So grab a notebook, settle into your space, and let's get started. Today, we're talking about something quite timeless, something that existed long before PowerPoint slides, before leadership books, before social media, and yet it's more relevant today than ever before: the art of storytelling. Storytelling isn't just entertainment. It's influence, it's connection, it's how we make sense of the world. And in this episode, I'll walk you through why stories are so powerful, the key elements of great storytelling, how you can use stories in everyday life and work. Plus, I'll share a few personal examples and give you simple exercises to practice right away. So let's dive in. Why do stories matter? Well, from the time we were children, we've been wired to listen to stories. Think about it. Bedtime tales, folk tales, movies, and even the conversations you enjoy most with friends, they all follow a story structure. Now here's the science. When you hear plain facts, your brain only processes them in one area. But when you hear a story, multiple areas light up: language, emotions, memory, imagination. You see the story in your mind. You feel the tension. You remember the resolution. This is why you might forget someone's job title, but remember the story they told, how they almost missed their first big interview because their car broke down. Here's the bottom line. Facts tell, stories sell. Facts inform, stories transform. And that's why mastering storytelling isn't optional if you want to influence, inspire, or connect. It's essential. So what makes a story powerful? What separates a dull story from one that keeps you on the edge of your seat? There are three universal elements. 1. Relatable characters. We care about stories when we see ourselves in them. The character could be you, someone else, or even an organization. But the listener needs to think, that could be me. 2. Conflict or challenge. Every story needs tension. Without a challenge, there's no reason to pay attention. Conflict creates curiosity. 3. Resolution. The payoff. It doesn't always have to be happily ever after, but the story needs closure, an insight, a lesson, a shift. Let's test this with a quick example. Imagine if I tell you, I went for a walk yesterday, the weather was nice. That's not a story, it's an update. But if I say, yesterday, I went for a walk to clear my head, but halfway through the sky turned dark, and within minutes I was drenched in a storm. As I ran for shelter, I realized sometimes life is exactly like this. You think you're in control and suddenly you're not. The trick isn't to avoid storms, it's to know you'll find shelter when you need it. Now that's a story. It has a character, a conflict, and a resolution. So let's look at different places you can use stories. A. In leadership. Imagine a manager trying to inspire their team after a tough quarter. Instead of saying, let's work harder, they share a story about a past failure, what they learned, and how persistence paid off. That story gives people hope. B. In sales or business. Instead of listing features, tell a story of how a customer who had a challenge and how your solution helped them. People relate to people, not bullet points. C. In everyday life. Even small talk becomes meaningful when framed as a story. Instead of saying, I had a busy day, you say, I spilled coffee on myself before my big meeting and then somehow nailed the presentation anyway. Suddenly, people lean in, they listen. So, knowing a story is one thing, delivering it is, well, quite another matter. Here are a few techniques. Start in the middle of the action. Don't spend 5 minutes setting the stage. Drop us right into the moment. For example, my palms were sweating, my voice was shaking, and I knew I had 10 seconds to make the room believe in me. Use sensory details. Let the audience see it, hear it, feel it. Play with pace and pauses. Speed up in exciting parts. Slow down when something is important. And never underestimate the power of silence. Make it personal. Vulnerability creates connection. Share struggles, not just successes. Let me share a quick story with you. When I first started speaking in front of groups, I thought I needed to sound professional. I packed my presentations with facts, charts, and polished language. Here's what happened. People were polite, but they weren't engaged. One day, instead of starting with data, I opened with a personal story about freezing up during my first ever college presentation. I talked about sweaty palms, the racing heart, the silence that felt like hours, and then I connected it back to the fear we all feel in high-stake moments. Guess what? People leaned in, they laughed, they nodded. The energy shifted. That's when I realized stories aren't a nice to have, they're the bridge to connection. Here's a simple exercise you can try after listening. 1. Think of one challenge you faced recently. 2. Break it down into 3 parts: the situation, the obstacle, the outcome. 3. Write it out in just a few sentences. 4. Share it in a conversation this week. Notice how people respond. The more you practice, the more natural storytelling becomes. So here's the big takeaway from today. Storytelling isn't about being dramatic or perfect. It's about being real. It's about making someone else see themselves in your words, feel something in their heart, and remember the message long after the conversation has ended. The art of storytelling is the art of being human. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear one of your stories. Reach out to me on Monisha at theinfinitelearning.com or The Infinite Learning on any social channel and share this podcast ahead. And that brings us to the end of today's episode, The Infinite Learning. I hope you're leaving this conversation with fresh insights and a few practical takeaways you can try right away. If you found value in this episode, here's what you can do. Share it with a friend or colleague who might benefit. Subscribe or follow the podcast so you never miss future episodes. And if you're feeling generous, like really generous, leave a review. It helps the show reach more people who are on the same path of growing and learning. I'd also love to hear from you personally. What resonated most with you today? What stories or experiences came to mind while listening? Remember, growth doesn't happen in a day, but it does happen daily when you commit to showing up for yourself in small, consistent ways. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. Until the next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep showing up as your best self.